Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. And thank you especially to the patrons who help make this possible every single day with their support at patreon.com/SW7x7. And that's going to include Peter, and yeah, last name pronunciation. So thank you for forgiving me for that in advance, Peter. I got to meet in person for the first time at Star Wars Celebration London and hang out with him for a bit and had a really great time. Peter is a patron of the podcast, and I'm so grateful, Peter. Thank you so much for your support. All right, let's talk about The Path of Hate, which is the third of 3 Morgan Elsbeth focused episodes in Tales of the Empire. We'll do this in our sort of modified 7 takeaway breakdown style, starting with our first takeaway as to where this is set in Star Wars storytelling. We are around 9 or 10 ABY, and we know that based on the events of the episode. It is past the fall of the Empire. It is before Ahsoka arrives on Corvus, and the New Republic is in charge, at least of part of the galaxy. So yeah, we are roughly 10 to 15 years ahead of where we were when we last saw Morgan Elsbeth in The Path of Anger. For a second takeaway, we'll talk about the fact that the audio description describes the smog that is in the sky above Caladan and the industrial zone that's off in the distance. So the efforts to get all the raw materials for the TIE Defender program and who the heck knows what else have been going on for quite a bit of time, and the people of Caladan are looking very bad, slumped shoulders and just absolute desolate visages, if you will. This is, all described in the audio description, in addition to you getting to see it, but you get to see how bad things are. And then there's a New Republic senator who shows up who says that people are basically enslaved for all intents and purposes. And for a third takeaway, let's talk about that senator. So there's a Senator Nadura who is working for the New Republic, but through the course of the story, we find out that this senator actually was on Corvus, was on Caladan previously, and managed to escape off-world. So this raises the first of the questions that I have about the episode, which is, how did she manage to do that? And if she managed to do that, then are there others who managed to do that? Why haven't more people managed to do this? And she shows up saying, hey, Morgan Elsbeth, surrender and we'll make sure you get a fair trial and the planet can become part of the New Republic. And she shows up with just a few New Republic soldiers or officers, and that's it. Like, I don't know what she was thinking that this was at all going to go to plan. She even says at one point that the crimes of Morgan Elsbeth are well documented. So I don't know what she was thinking, this senator showing up with just a handful of security people, and that was it. So yeah, we'll talk about the New Republic on our deep dive episode because, man, yeah, that raises even more questions. For a fourth takeaway, we'll talk about Morgan Elsbeth and the fact that she says, yeah, I can't stop this train, no one can. And she actually seems regretful about it. Like, she realizes that she's in over her head somehow, and yet she says she has a vision and she will fulfill her destiny. What that vision is, what that destiny is, yeah, that's kind of up for debate at this point. And knowing what we know at this part of the timeline, she hasn't seen or heard from Grand Admiral Thrawn in the better part of a decade. So what could she be possibly thinking is her vision or destiny at this point? I mean, I suppose the obvious answer is still exacting some kind of revenge. She tells her townspeople that they are bringing order to the galaxy. They're keeping it from falling into ruin, but that's not really what motivates her. We know that it's her anger, her thirst for revenge that's motivating her. And of course, the senator says, yeah, I know you wouldn't want to see everything burned down around you, which is obviously the wrong thing to say because that's exactly what Morgan Elsbeth goes and does, which becomes the explanation for why we see the forest in the shape that it's in when Ahsoka shows up in the Mandalorian series. And speaking of, this is our fifth takeaway. So Nadura, when everything goes south, tries to get a distress call sent out, and the person who picks up that distress call is none other than Bo-Katan. And I had a second when I was watching this where I was like, the New Republic is working with Mandalorians? Like, why haven't we known this? And then it occurred to me that now is probably just, all frequencies distress call, and it just so happened that Bo-Katan is the one who picked up on it. The intention there, of course, is to create the connective tissue between that moment in Tales of the Empire and the moment of Ahsoka arriving on Corvus and hunting down Morgan Elsbeth. And for a sixth takeaway, well, more questions that are kind of introduced where like the door is open to things, but we don't get satisfactory answers for. Like, we find out that the people of Caladan have no idea that the emperor is dead and the empire has fallen. So it's like 5 years after the Battle of Endor, 4 years after the Galactic Concordance is signed. Word doesn't travel fast to this part of the galaxy. But does Morgan Elsbeth know that the Empire has fallen? I mean, she has to have some idea about this, right? And presuming that the answer to that is yes, that she knows that the Empire has fallen, then what is she doing with these factories and all of the output that they're producing and the control over the local systems? Like, where is all this stuff going now? What is she sending it to, diverting it to? Is she still in touch with an Imperial remnant? Is it Pelion that she's connected with? And that's how things are going, except it's not going to support a TIE Defender factory, so where is all this material going now? Ultimately, I think this episode, kind of frustrated me in the sense that, it's one thing to, show us things and not necessarily explain, like the fact that in that second episode, The Path of Anger, Morgan Elsbeth already has her Beskar spear. They don't explain where it came from. That's a comparatively minor detail. But these are major details. They made a major detail out of the fact that she designed the TIE Defender, and that's how she and Thrawn connected and networked together. But there are too many major things in the story that are sort of alluded to that are just not answered. And for a seventh and final takeaway, this is usually our fun fact takeaway, I'll flag the fact that we had Shelby Young and Steve Blum doing additional voices in the episode. It's always fun to see those two regularly recurring folks show up in other roles. Not to mention Wing Ti Chow back in the role of Wing, and also just kudos to Diana Lena Santo, who did a terrific job with Morgan Elsbeth, and it's really awesome to see more of the character overall. Notwithstanding the fact that there were some frustrating elements about this particular story, but yeah, overall it's been really cool to learn more about Morgan Elsbeth, and she did a fantastic job with it. So that's what I've got for you about The Path of Hate, which is the third and final Morgan Elsbeth story in Tales of the Empire, and that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy this daily dose of Star Wars joy, then please help more people experience this daily dose of Star Wars joy and add it into their lives. You can do that with ratings and reviews and subscribes and likes and joins and follows and comments. You can do that by just telling people online or in real life, and you can even help me produce this podcast on a daily basis, and you can learn more about that at patreon.com/SW7X7. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.